This is season 3 of The Sweater with Kathleen Dames. I'm your host, Kathleen Dames, and over the course of our 12-week season, we will knit basic cable together. An awesome worsted weight cabled pullover. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 4, season 3 of The Sweater with Kathleen Dames. Today we're going to be talking about things you can do to change basic cable to be the sweater you want to wear. So I'm wearing basic cable as written. This is the original, usually it's on Jane, but today I thought I would show you some of the changes that I've made that are going into the premium cable pattern, which are also some of the things that you can do to your basic cable. There are also a number of other things you can do to the basic cable pattern to make it your own. I've heard from a number of people who have been interested in making changes to make it a sweater that will work for them or their loved one. So today I thought we'd talk about the different choices that you have when you're starting with any pattern, but in particular we're going to be looking at the basic cable options. So as we know, basic cable, bottom up, worked in the round, pullover with cables on the body, stockinette sleeves, garter stitch edges, and no shaping. But what I've done for you is I have put these panels on the side of stockinette stitch that are a great place to sneak in, not even sneak in, to just put some waist shaping in there if you want it. So that's one of the great easy changes that you can make, is to just incorporate some waist shaping in the sides, decreases, and then a stretch of straight, and then some increases, and you can figure out how to space those apart to fit your body. If you are curious about waist shaping distances, you can look at my solstice cardi pattern that has waist shaping in it, and that was our season 1 sweater. That's a great place to start. There are a lot of other sweater designs of mine and other people's that incorporate waist shaping, so you can definitely find the best way to do it for you with a little bit of research. For premium cable, I am doing waist shaping. So let's get this on Jane, shall we? This is premium cable so far. It's the body, and I have a sleeve finished. And I incorporated the waist shaping here on the side. So let's get this on Jane. Luckily, Jane doesn't have arms, so that makes it a little easier. And you can also see that I incorporated a pocket into this design. I thought that would be a fun element. Okay, so Jane, let's get this on you. There we go. It's up a little high, but you can see here we've got decreases down at the bottom, a straight stretch here for the waist, and then increases for the bust. And I've done them in the side panels. That's really the easiest way to do something like this. I ended up using paired decreases on either side of a marker. So that means I used knit 2 together and slip knit. In other patterns I have used a center double decrease. As you may know, that's one of my favorite decreases, but here I felt that we needed to keep that sort of side seam area in stockinette. And then of course we do paired increases, and I use make one left and make one right. You could do a lifted increase, you could knit front and back, you could do yarn over, you know, there are lots of different ways to increase. But I find the make ones, and I've said this in previous seasons, they do create a fairly invisible increase. The lifted increase, the thing with that is that it takes a little bit of fabric away, a little bit of yarn away from other stitches, and it tends to be a little tighter. So I find this to be very smooth, and it makes me happy. So waist shaping, great first adjustment to make. Another adjustment, and you can see that I did it here. Actually, you can't see it because it's down below the camera, but instead of garter stitch, I started with a 3x3 rib. And I can show that to you here also on the sleeve. So the 3x3 rib, it just fit with my numbers and worked out nicely, and I think it provides a nice sort of broad rib. It doesn't pull in too much, which is generally one of my something I have against ribbing on things like hems. I just find that pulling in right there is not where I want the fabric to pull in, so that's why I often do prefer a garter stitch border. It allows the fabric to not curl, but it doesn't pull in and where I don't want it to pull in. So I chose to do a 3x3 rib, And I wanted to pin on the sleeve sort of in position so that we get an even better idea of how things are going here for Jane. Another thing you can change is the cable pattern itself. I used a simple 3/3 cable on basic cable. It's crossed every 7th round. I thought I liked that. This pattern, the premium cable, is using a more erratic cable, and it crosses on the 2nd, 6th, and 16th. I'd have to go back and look at the chart, but it's not as standard in its crossings, and that creates this slightly more dynamic cable, and I liked that. And I also incorporated this little twist stitch, which is done every other round. So it's using the same number of stitches. I used the same numbers, but I changed up the cable pattern. And so there's less pearl fabric between the cables on this, so it's a little more complicated. And of course, I'm using 2 colors of Spirit Trail Zalti. I'm using Naturel and Scrimshaw, and I'm alternating rounds on that. Every other round is the other color. And I really liked that, the way that fabric sort of worked up. But I think I showed you last week, I did try out, I auditioned some other row or round patterns, and on the bottom is 2x2, and then up top is 4x4, and I just found it to be not what I was looking for. I really loved the blend of every other round. Something to keep in mind if you are going to go with something other than every other round is that when you're switching between knit and purl in a round, you will get blips of the other color. And that was another reason I liked it here. It's got a nice blended cohesiveness to it, but you can see sort of blips here, and they get a little more obvious the more rows you have between the two. And it's when going from between a knit and a purl stitch. So, but that certainly gave me a lot of food for thought. It was a great way to audition some cables and try out different options for alternating your colors if you decide to go with 2 colors, which I think is a lot of fun. Because I was alternating 2 colors and I wanted to do this pocket, I decided to do the pocket in the Scrimshaw color that matched the ribbing, and it will match the ribbing up top too. Just as a little bit of contrast, a little bit of interest. So that's something fun you can do. You can put a cable, you can put a cable on it, you can put a pocket on it. You could also even try putting a pocket on your sleeve if you liked, that would be fun. And of course this pattern, the premium cable pattern, will show you how to do this seamlessly. I had a lot of fun figuring out the best way to do the pocket so that you're not really, I don't like a lot of sewing, so there's no sewing involved with this pocket. It's do it as you go. Okay, so let's see what my list says. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention about the ribbing is I began with the increased number. So in basic cable, you begin with a number for your garter stitch hems, and then you do an increase to achieve the number of stitches you'll need. That compensates for the crossing over of the cables. You need a few more stitches to do that because when you cross over the cables, that makes the fabric tighter. And so you need a few more stitches to get the proper size. So instead of starting with that slightly reduced number, it's usually about 10% less. You start with the full increased number of stitches and do the ribbing. And the ribbing contracts a little so that that kind of balances out and you don't have to worry about too much flaring. You could work 1x1 or 2x2 ribbing in the stockinette side panels if you don't want to do the more traditional waist shaping. If you just don't want to change the number of stitches in your sweater, but you still want a slightly more close fit, definitely ribbing is the way to go. 1x1 or 2x2 will give you that effect and will contract the fabric nicely, and your body will sort of stretch it out and it will fit your form. We did waist shaping in the side panels. You could try 3/4 sleeves instead of full length sleeves, or you could even do short sleeves or cap sleeves. You know, that's all up to you. If you're doing 3/4 sleeves, I recommend averaging the numbers between your cast on and your final upper arm measurement. So there's the number of stitches you start at the cast on, and then you're going to be increasing up to the top of the arm, the widest part. If you want 3/4 sleeves, you don't want to start with that small cuff number, but unless you want it to really flare out, you don't want it to start up here. You want to add the cuff number to the upper sleeve number, add those up, divide by 2, and that is your cast on number. Okay, so that's the average between the two, and that will give you a good spot right around here for 3/4 sleeves. Of course, if you want short sleeves, I recommend starting with that upper sleeve number. Obviously, you're not going to do any increases for the short sleeve. For 3/4 sleeve, you will just then increase to the top of sleeve number. Okay. Short or bell sleeves, you could also, if you wanted to have long sleeves or 3/4 sleeves that have a slight bell, you can start with this upper arm number and just work straight for however long you want it to be. So that is very much knitter's choice. You could alter the cable crossing round. So as I said, basic cable, the cross is every 7th round. How can we do that? Well, because we're working in the round, we don't have to do it on only an even round or row. However, you can do that. You can make it shorter. I would recommend going the other way and making it longer. You know, you could go 20 rounds before doing a crossing, and you'll get a totally different kind of cable. It's really cool how just changing the round can make all the difference. If you decide to go to make this a cardigan, you are going to need to change the cable crossing round to an even round so that you're always working it on the front. It's a little more complicated to do cable crossing on the wrong side row. Okay, I'll do the cable crossing round. Lower the neckline. This has a very standard neckline. It comes up about a little above my collarbone, and it's the same front and back. You could choose to have the front lower, maybe a little more flattering, you know, whatever you're looking for. The easiest way to do that is to hold some of the stitches here at the front, and then you will be working back and forth. And so be careful about those cable crossing rounds in that instance. Right. And of course, you'll also be working the raglan decreases at the same time. So you've got to keep all that in mind. You could put cables on the sleeves. You could do like I've done here for Jane, for premium cable. I did one cable that will go all the way up to the neck, just centered on the sleeve. But you could do them all the way around, and you could then just leave the increase panel as straight stockinette, or as you have enough stitches, you could begin another cable. If you are going to do cables on the sleeves, be sure to increase the sleeve stitch number after the cuff by about 10%. So for that, I would suggest what you would do is knit 9, make 1 all the way around. And then you'll have to double check your numbers to make sure that you keep that cable panel in the center if you're doing just one, or however you're planning on changing your sleeve. Okay. You could work the body in stockinette. Don't like cables? Don't want to do them? You can still do this sweater. It's not quite as exciting. You could just then don't increase the number of stitches after the hem, okay? Then you have the right number of stitches already. You could make it a tunic. Knit it longer, knit the body longer, have it be a dress or a tunic, go to, you know, sort of low hip or mid thigh. Make it a crop top. Make it just be shorter. And you could work it in 1 row stripes like I'm doing here for premium cable. You could of course work it in 2 or 4 or whatever row stripes. Strike your fancy. But I love the 1 row stripes for this. I'm just really, really enjoying it. Use a contrasting color for the hem, cuffs, and collar, and of course that's what I'm doing in premium cable. We've got the main color, and that's starting us off, and I'm using that for the pocket as well, and I'll use it more up at the top. And then we've got our contrasting color, which in this case is the Au Naturel. Let's see. put a hood on it. We'll see. I think I have enough yarn to do it, and I'm really excited. I hope so. Otherwise, I may try to do more of a cowl neck up at the top. I'm waiting to see how it sort of shakes out in terms of yarn, but you could definitely put a hood on it, put a cowl on it, make it a turtleneck, and of course put a pocket on it is also on my list, and I've done that here. You could also do a pocket on the sleeve, maybe for your phone or whatever. You could, along with I suggested doing a turtleneck, you'd probably want to do a few more decreases in the yoke here, and then switch to a turtleneck. And for that, you probably want to do ribbing, unless you want to do sort of a roll neck, J. Crew kind of effect. Then you could just knit in stockinette until you feel that it was the right length. Do be careful on the bind off if you do a turtleneck, because that's pretty close to your neck, so that's a lot less fabric going around, and so you'll want to make sure you have a really stretchy bind off in that case, because otherwise you won't be able to get it on and you won't be able to get it off, and that's no good. If you're going to knit this for a man, you really could just do it by following the basic pattern of basic cable. If you're a man, whoever, if that's you or a man, wants a higher neckline, then you will want to do a few more sets of raglan decreases and plain rows before you do the collar. You may even want to raise the back of the neck a little bit. Okay, and then if you want to make this a cardigan, which I think is a great idea, there are a few things you'll need to do. One, you'll need to swatch, get gauge going back and forth. You will need to change the beginning of the round to beginning of row, and you'll want it to be in the center. So you will need to remember when it comes time to put the sleeves on to not make the sleeves front and back, because we usually have our beginning of round over here. So shift it to the front, add on probably, I'd say 6 more stitches, maybe 5, to that cast on number, so that you can do an overlapping button band, and then work the first 5 and last 5 stitches in garter stitch and do buttonholes every once in a while. If you wanted it to be a zip up cardigan, I wouldn't bother increasing by those 5 stitches. I would just leave it as is, because if you think about it, you're going to add a zipper, which will add actually a little more space to the front of the cardigan. The other thing, and I mentioned it earlier about the cables, is you will need to make sure that you are crossing your cables on an even round. It's just easier. You don't want the headache of trying to do cable crossings on the wrong side of the work. So you'll want to make sure that you cross them every 6th, or I recommend every 8th row, and that way you're always working it on the right side. What else would we need to do about a cardigan? Like I said, the first and last 5 stitches, you want to have probably some nice straight edges here on the front, and so I would work those in garter stitch. That's just the way I would do it. You could also not bother with edgings and then pick up and do work button bands the long way afterwards. I'm not as fond of that, but that's me. The other thing, of course, is that you will need to eliminate the front center cable. So you'll need to do a little math just to make sure that you are on the right stitch for starting yourself out correctly. And so you will have 1 more cable crossing in the back than in the front, because we've eliminated this one to replace it with a button band. So those are some of the ways you could customize your basic cable, and some of the things I am doing to customize my premium cable. I think that's covered all of the ideas I had for basic customization. So as you can see, premium cable, it starts off actually with the same number of stitches. It's the same concept of a cabled pullover, but I have added 3x3 ribbing, a cable on the sleeve, a pocket, waist shaping, and 1 row stripes with contrasting collar, cuff, hems, and pocket. And I have a few things left that I'm not quite sure yet how I want to do it. Sometimes I can write out the whole pattern in advance, and sometimes I have to make some changes, or I want to make some adjustments as I get up here into the yoke where the action can happen. So the things left to decide for me, one of them will be just dependent on how much yarn I have, but I'd like to do a hood or more of a cowl type collar. So that will depend on how much yarn is left, because I want to maintain those stripes, and I have used a little bit more of the main color. Another thing I could do is to change the style of the yoke. I can go with a straight up raglan. It will certainly work. It will work with the cable that I have put on the sleeve, because that cable is about 10 stitches wide, and so that would end up being right up here on the shoulder. I may do a saddle yoke, a saddle shoulder. Things come up and then they move in, and you make this saddle here along the shoulder, which would fit nicely this cable. But I haven't decided yet. I may just go, in some ways a raglan is a little easier. You just, you work your raglan decrease round and then a plain round. So that's kind of straightforward, whereas saddle shoulder requires some more complicated shaping, because you are shaping the fabric to come in and then go up and to bring that saddle up onto the shoulder. But it is a lot of fun. It involves doing some short rows to connect the saddle to the front and back, so that can be a lot of fun. So I just have to decide sort of how things are going and what I am really ultimately looking for. So that's a lot of the different choices that you can make. It's a lot of fun to think about adding your own flair to your sweater. And if you have questions about this, be sure to ask me. You can leave it in the comments. You can write me an email. If you're signed up for the newsletter, which you should be, for the sweater, then of course just hit reply on any email and it comes right to me. There's also the Ravelry forum. And of course there will be a thread in my group for this episode. Upcoming next week, we have the live show, which is always a lot of fun. I will be talking for an hour. I will be answering whatever questions you have. I've already gotten a few from you guys, and I appreciate that immensely. If you have more questions, feel free to write in and ask those. It can be about customization. It can be about instructions in the pattern. It can be about whatever is on your mind about the sweater. Ask, and I will answer. If you want to participate live, it will be on YouTube. It'll be a live YouTube event, and I will set up the sort of page for that shortly, so you'll get a notification if you are subscribed to my YouTube channel. And if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, you'll just have to wait for the newsletter announcement, but I will mention it in this week's newsletter. We will be doing this at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. We've just switched from daylight savings time to standard. So 1:30 standard, that's 5 hours off Greenwich Mean Time if you follow time that way. And we will meet then, and we will talk live for an hour. So 1:30 to 2:30, I will answer questions. We can chat about whatever is going on. Your chatting will of course be typed, and I will be talking live to you on screen. So I'm looking forward to that. It's always a lot of fun, and I hope you have lots of great questions. I hope that I can answer them. And if I can't answer them, of course, I will figure it out and let you know after the fact. If you can't make the live show, of course, it will go live, thanks to the magic of YouTube, immediately after I end our time together. So then it'll just become a regular episode. You can watch it any time. Hopefully I will have answered your question, or somebody will have asked it if you didn't ask it in the first place. But then it'll just be regular, and I will add that episode to iTunes, the audio of that. So just be aware, for iTunes, most of my episodes are only about 20 minutes or so, like a TV show, but this will be a 1-hour live extravaganza. So be prepared for a long, good chat about knitting, about basic cable, premium cable, and everything that goes into sweater knitting. But on Black Friday, I will be showing you how to cable without a cable needle and talking all about cables and sort of magic that goes into them. So until next week, the live show, which I'm very excited for, be well. Thanks so much for being here, and happy knitting. Bye. This is season 3 of The Sweater with Kathleen Dames. Over the course of our 12-week season, we will knit basic cable together. Many thanks to Jen at Spirit Trail Fiberworks, Corinna at Picnic Knits, Tara Swiger and my fellow Starship captains, and you for being part of The Sweater with Kathleen Dames. Don't forget to visit KathleenDames.com/thesweater to sign up for the newsletter. Just not a joiner? Purchase your copy of Basic Cable from my Ravelry shop anytime. Be sure to share your progress on social media with the hashtags BasicCable and KDSweater. Questions? Comments? Visit the Kathleen Dames Design Ravelry forum today. Thanks so much for joining me, and happy knitting!